So, dear participants, thank you for your great mobilization. As the National Diversity Charter, we aim at inspiring action regarding all grounds of discrimination, including those which may be less treated by the organizations. One objective of the Charter is to succeed in organization. Understanding and raising empathy for minorities enables us to achieve this goal, hence the theme for today's conference. At European level, fighting discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is one of the priorities for the years to come. Several charters work on that thematic of LGBTI. The initials refer collectively to people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and intersex. Just to give you some figures, according to the EU LGBTI survey from the European Fundamental Rights Agency from 2012, only 28% of LGBTI people in Luxembourg are always open at work. 44% are selectively open and 28% hide their identity. Coming out as an open company can have positive effects such as better job satisfaction, more motivation and better performance. And this is the issues for our conference. Some of you might question, should LGBTI be addressed in the workplace and how? To answer these questions, we will have experts and testimonies. As BNP Paribas supports this event, I would like to leave the floor to Fabienne Dasnoy, Diversity Officer, for a welcome speech. Fabienne, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In the name of BNP Paribas, I'm pleased to welcome you all to this conference. And as head of diversity and inclusion for BNP Paribas in Luxembourg, I particularly thank my colleagues who are numerous today. When I sent the invitation to the 600 managers of BNP Paribas in Luxembourg, I received a common feedback telling, Fabienne, why the hell do you want to talk about this topic? LGBT is not an issue here in Luxembourg. Maybe in France, where mariage pour tous has not been an easy job, but not here in Luxembourg, no. Even at the top of the country, we have successful LGBT people who are respected and even admired. And my answer to this feedback is that the simple fact that non-LGBT people think it is not an issue is the first issue. Without knowing, without experiencing the situation, non-LGBT people cannot answer a question that concerns being LGBT and feeling well in the workplace. For sure, we are in a privileged part of the world where we do not hang to death LGBT people. But it doesn't mean that there is nothing to improve. And first improvement is about awareness. And today, awareness is the objective. So I hope later when you leave this room, you will have a better understanding of the reasons to manage the question of LGBTI in the workplace. To start our conference, I am pleased and honored to introduce to you our Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Etienne Schneider, Minister of the Economy, Minister of Defense, and Minister of Interior Security. As a gay person, Mrs. Schneider is also co-founder of Rosa Lëtzebuerg, and he supports initiatives that lead to inclusion, whatever the difference between people is. Mr. Schneider, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, equality is a fundamental right and a common value, and it is not subject to any negotiations or restrictions. 1 year ago, Luxembourg has made a big step towards equality by finally adopting and legalizing same-sex marriage. And as you said, one might think that in a country where the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are both openly gay, homosexuality is not longer an issue. But nevertheless, homophobia and discrimination towards LGBTI people still exist, both inside and outside the workplace. While progress has been made, many lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people still worry that revealing their sexuality at work will have negative consequences. A surprisingly large number of people hide aspects of their identity at work. Studies have proven that more than 50% of homosexual people choose not to disclose their sexual orientation at work. 1/3 of these employees struggle to be themselves at work because they believe conformity is critical to their long-term career advancement. So these people change aspects of their behavior or their appearance in order to fit in at work. But hiding is a progressive habit. And once you start hiding, it becomes harder and harder to step forward and speak out. People become paralyzed by the fear of not being accepted. I believe that lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people should be able to fully participate in Luxembourg's social and professional life, free from discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Ladies and gentlemen, the diversity of our society should be reflected in the workplace. This is relevant to Luxembourg. We are an open, dynamic and a welcoming country and a hub for many international talents. Today, we are therefore sharing thoughts on this topic, and we are here in order to ask ourselves, what challenges do LGBTI people face in the workplace? How can businesses support their LGBTI workforce? What needs to change within businesses to create an inclusive environment? And last but not least, which companies are getting it right? Ladies and gentlemen, I was not openly gay when I started my studies in Brussels and London, and even after I finished them, I didn't want to disclose my homosexuality. Why? First of all, I did not have a boyfriend at that time, so I thought it was not that urgent to do my coming out. And second, I was a member of the local council in my hometown, and I thought it might not be that such a good idea to tell people over there. But then, all of a sudden, everything changed as I met somebody I wanted to be with and share my life with. So I thought that I had no other possibilities, no other choice anymore to do my coming out. I told myself, anyway, people will get to know once you live together with this man in this small town and being a local councillor. So I decided first to tell my family, then my closest friends, and later on my colleagues at work. And all went surprisingly well until the upcoming local elections, where several candidates of the local CSV used my sexual orientation to abase me. And I must tell you that this was quite a shocking experience to me. But when I nearly doubled my result at the election, I became increasingly confident, while seeing that people did not approve this spiteful abasement campaign. So when I became a minister for the first time in February 2012, I saw only two personal matters that risked to become sensitive to me. First of all, my enthusiasm as a socialist for classic cars, especially for my Rolls-Royce convertible. And second, my sexual orientation, which was unknown on a national level, as I wasn't very much known at that time. And that's why, again, I put all my cards on the table at the very beginning of my national political mandate, and I tell you what, nobody was really interested in my homosexuality, but many were discussing about my Rolls-Royce, and they still do. So I could conclude now in telling you that you need a Rolls-Royce if you want to divert the public discussion from your sexual orientation towards cars, but I think that's not the best, neither the cheapest solution. So everything I want to tell you, the message I want to give you is that you should not hide and don't care about the ones who don't accept your difference. They are not worth it, and you have only one life, and you should try to make the best out of it. So, distinguished guests, I would like to thank the Diversity Charter Lëtzebuerg and BNP Paribas for organizing today's conference. I would also like to thank the guest speakers who kindly agreed to participate and who will fuel the discussions by sharing their experiences and their thoughts. I wish you all an interesting conference, and I hope it will bring you inspiration, new ideas, and fruitful exchanges. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are the corporate world and LGBTI the world of silence? To answer that question, let me introduce Mr. David Pollard. He is the founder and executive director of Workers' Pride, a non-profit umbrella foundation based in Amsterdam that strives for greater acceptance of the LGBT people in the workplace and in society. He was also the founder and former global chairman of ING's LGBT employee network, GALA. David, the floor is yours.
Merci. Thank you very much, Nancy. I was wondering which picture they were going to use. This is the Obama look, I guess. Okay, I'm really very pleased to be back in my old stomping ground, at least when it comes to the financial industry. As Nancy said, I worked for ING for 15 years and in Amsterdam, and before that I worked at Commerzbank in Frankfurt for 5 years. So I know very well what it means to be a banker. You also, after all those years, you get a very good feeling for how things work, for what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Being an LGBT person, you also learn when it's okay to be yourself at work and when it's not. And this might sound a bit odd to many people for whom it is never even an issue if they can be themselves at work. Of course, you will speak to your colleagues on Monday about what you did over the weekend. For example, my wife and I took the kids to a football game. My husband and I went to a great new restaurant. Or my mother-in-law cooked her famous cordon bleu yet again. This is normal. And yes, it's also part of our working lives. We spend so much of our lives at work that actually not including some aspect of your private life in conversation with your colleagues is simply not normal. Being able to be authentic, to bring your full self to work is what makes an employee comfortable. It makes him more productive. It makes him a better team player. Happier, more productive employees directly benefit an organization's bottom line, and this is the business case in a nutshell. But what if your colleagues don't know that person you took the kids with to the football game was another woman? Or that great new restaurant you found was with another man? Or that fabulous, ever reoccurring cordon bleu from your mother-in-law is actually made by your husband's mother, and that you're a man as well. What about that? These are the dilemmas that LGBT people face on a daily basis. The challenge comes in that the energy you have to expend even thinking about whether or not you have told somebody about your same-sex partner, your sexual preference, or your gender identity is a true barrier to being yourself at work. And perhaps even worse, to being a happy, productive employee and that good team player that I was talking about. Everybody wants to be able to contribute something at work. Those organizations that acknowledge this basic fact and the fact that creating a working environment in which people can be themselves is vitally important are ultimately the organizations that will be the most successful. And this holds true for all types of organizations, public sector, private sector, wherever it may be. But let me start at the beginning with a little bit of information about the LGBT community. As we heard, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people are everywhere. And they can be anyone. They can be your bosses, your colleagues, your clients, your children, your parents, the postboy, the CEO, the astronaut, the politician, the mechanic, or the soldier. Everyone, everywhere. And many of you know LGBT people. And if you think you don't know LGBT people, well, you're probably mistaken. Which brings me to the second basic dilemma, not just for the LGBT community, but also for those who are not LGBT, but who would like to show their support. How do you find someone who can be invisible if they want to be? You know, it's true that there are many signals and signs, particularly within the LGBT community, we often know this, that indicate whether a person is LGBT or not. While in some cases it might be true, it is certainly not true in every case. And this can lead to a world of silence that ultimately is unproductive for everyone. So how does an employer actually go about creating an open and accepting working environment when you cannot actually even identify who you're trying to help? Conversely, why should an LGBT person be open about their sexual identity when they fear they might be ridiculed, held back for promotion, or in a worst case scenario, even bullied, as we heard? How do we make this corporate world of silence one in which everyone can truly be themselves? At Workplace Pride, the organization that I represent, we have now for 10 years been working together with multinationals, governments, and academia about this very topic. We have participated in and initiated studies, conferences, workshops, surveys, interviews, and testimonials, and almost without fail, the answer is quite simple. Creating and maintaining an atmosphere where people can be themselves at work needs to be fully and authentically embraced by top leadership of an organization. Acknowledging LGBT workplace inclusion is not enough, though. It must be proactively communicated about on a regular basis and for a long time at all levels of the organization. Incidentally, this holds true for all types of diverse communities. Everyone basically wants to feel included. Luckily, top leadership is not alone in this challenge. LGBT employee networks exist for the very purpose of creating inclusion in your organization. They are eager to help and are invaluable assets, so please do call upon them, and you'll hear a little bit more from our guest speakers as well about this. But this is maybe a new thing for many people. The LGBT community also has a responsibility. We also have a responsibility. The clearer that it becomes that we can be ourselves, the more important it is that role models step up and pave the way for other colleagues to be open about their sexuality. Personally, I feel that this is particularly the case for higher-level LGBT people in organizations. Even though they might not want their sexual identity their sexuality to be identified with their position, in fact, by not acknowledging this important aspect of their lives, the implicit message to other colleagues throughout the organization is that it is not okay to talk about being LGBT at work. Okay, the first slide, please. So these are the members of Workplace Pride. As you can see, many big companies, a couple of banks and insurance companies as well. These organizations represent the full gamut of sectors. There's financial, logistics, tech, just about everything, law firms. Whereas many of these organizations are at different levels on the LGBT workplace inclusion evolutionary ladder, on how far along advanced they are with this topic. All of them are making an effort to improve their policies and practices in this area. Our foundation facilitates this by creating many opportunities for them to come together and by laying the groundwork of progress for this topic. Over time, though, we have found that it is often very difficult for organizations to make progress with LGBT workplace inclusion by themselves, particularly when it comes to cross-border policies and practices, as they simply do not have enough data or a basis for comparison. Sometimes it seems like a true minefield out there trying to realize the best LGBT policies and practices for your organization, and I'm sure from the diversity standpoint, you understand this. Unfortunately, the workplace, just like the rest of society, does not operate in a vacuum. Luckily, there have been many positive trends in 2015 for LGBT acceptance in society, such as the legalization of same-sex marriage in the United States, in Ireland and Mexico, along with the decriminalization of homosexuality in Mozambique. This facilitates the situation for employers and in businesses in general. Sadly, though, there are just as many negative trends. Last June, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights said that since 2011, hundreds of LGBT people have been killed and thousands more injured in brutal, violent attacks. Other documented violations include torture, arbitrary detention, denial of rights to assembly and expression, and discrimination in healthcare, education, housing, and employment. In Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, Libya, LGBT people are killed, while the very disturbing moves by Russia to marginalize LGBT people, both legally and culturally, is negatively affecting an entire region. Closer to home, though, this might seem very far away, even though you probably have activities in these countries, but closer to home, there are still 25% of the people are not out of the closet in the Netherlands, the country where I live, in Amsterdam. 25%. It's 50% in England, and over 60% in Poland, and I think I've seen BNP Paribas offices in Warsaw. The loss of economic potential, both at the corporate and at the national level, in low productivity, absenteeism, and loss of creativity is staggering. According to our own estimates from Workplace Pride, this is up to $200 billion annually in lost revenues in the EU. You go to the next slide, please. Here, this is just a bit of a snapshot. I'm not going to go over that. But you can see the red countries are those countries where it's more than 60% of the people are not out of the closet at work, 30% to 60% in the yellow, and the green are still up to 30%. Gives you an idea of what we're really talking about here. For these very reasons, Workplace Pride initiated our global benchmark in 2013. It's a tool which allows organizations to measure their LGBT policies and practices around the world. The global benchmark is unique in the sense as it addresses the true challenge of organizations who are trying to make progress with this topic, but are faced with a multitude of legal jurisdictions, mainly outside of Europe, but here as well, and cultural differences in the countries where they operate. The global benchmark also represents the voice of the LGBT community. Just in a nutshell, the benchmark is a free online survey of 35 questions which participating organizations fill out themselves about their own LGBT policies and practices around the world. Individual results are provided back to each participating organization, and this includes a breakdown of 7 sections such as policy and communication, workplace awareness, expertise and monitoring, and LGBT employee networks, which highlight areas that the organization can actually improve in. Now, the individual reports were actually designed to be used as a management tool by making the gaps statistically visible and actionable for each organization that takes part. Finally, both the process and the yearly results are validated by Leiden University in the Netherlands to make sure it's very neutral. So it's not just Workplace Pride that's deciding this. Go to the next slide, please. So in this setting, I'm quite happy to say that BNP Paribas has scored the second highest worldwide on the global benchmark for 2015. So kudos for that. The ranking that you see here allows organizations to see how they've scored amongst their peers. There's one other financial institution there I see, yeah, with ING. But more importantly, this demonstrates how the corporate world can truly be an agent of change when it comes to LGBT inclusion in the workplace. However, even the top scorer, IBM, has a way to go to achieve a totally inclusive workplace for LGBT employees worldwide when it comes to our measurements. You see they're at 87%. That's on a scale of 100, so there's still work to be done. Workplace Pride in the organizations that we work with realize we cannot change the world overnight. It will be a long journey, that takes into account many different stakeholders. Many of you in this room are, of course, stakeholders. Many different attitudes, and it will require a great deal of patience. Business and political leaders will need to consistently repeat the message that their organizations are respectful and welcoming to LGBT people. LGBT people ourselves need to help and support our straight allies and those people in the organizations that we work with to help us make progress. We work together with this. Along the way, we will help to create open and accepting workplaces in countries where our members operate. While respecting local laws, we will also ensure that progress can be made on a country-by-country basis and business unit by business unit. Workplace Pride and its members sincerely believe that working constructively and positively with each other and all of our other stakeholders, as I said, will help us achieve the ultimate goal of workplaces around the world where LGBT people can truly be themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, David. BNP Paribas set diversity and inclusion as a strategic objective for its human resources. And we work hard on this since a couple of years. Last year in France, Jean-Laurent Bonnafé, the CEO of BNP Paribas, signed the charter L'Autre Cercle, engaging his company in improving LGBT inclusion at work. And as David Pollard said, BNP Paribas is ranked second in place in the 2015 Workplace Pride benchmark. So, as a company, as BNP Paribas, we are happy to share with you the BNP Paribas experience and concrete examples of action plans that have been taken to improve LGBT inclusion in the United Kingdom and in France. And to do so, I am delighted to introduce to you two of my international colleagues. Vinay Kapoor, please Vinay. Vinay Kapoor is Head of Diversity and Inclusion in BNP Paribas United Kingdom. I would say that more than being Head of Diversity, Vinay is diversity. He is an out LGBT professional of the Black, Asian, or minority ethnic heritage. Vinay has 20 years of professional career, with recent 15 in banking and finance in the City of London. He has been named in the top 50 of different LGBT and D&I professional list as the one of The Guardian and the one of The Economist. Welcome, Vinay. Bruce Hedgecock. Bruce is Head of Strategic Communication of BNP Paribas Corporate and Institutional Banking in Paris. As Sting the singer would say, Bruce is our American in Paris. Before joining the banking sector 22 years ago, first in New York and then in France, Bruce worked as a translator in the US and in Morocco. Bruce is also the spokesperson of the recently created BNP Paribas LGBT Pride Network in France. And our roundtable will be moderated by the maestro, David Pollard. So please, David Pollard, let's make LGBT diversity, LGBT inclusion alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabienne. Nice to know I'm the maestro. So wonderful to see such a full room here. It's always a good thing. We do this all the time at Workplace Pride with large organizations and large conferences like this, but this really shows a great deal of interest here in Luxembourg. I think it's wonderful to see all these happy and curious faces. So welcome. And welcome, of course, to the guys, which have just been introduced. Now, just a very brief word about myself, a little bit deeper. I did indeed start the LGBT Employee Network at ING back in 2003. So I know a lot what they've gone through, and we kind of did a little bit of talking beforehand. But I'm curious to hear their own perspectives, particularly for your colleagues here. So let's start off with Vinay. Vinay, can you tell us Why should the audience care about LGBT, and why should they get involved?
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for having me here. I can't think of one reason of why everyone here should worry about LGBT issues in the workplace. I can think of 3.7 trillion reasons, because that's the global LGBT spending power per annum, $3.7 trillion per annum. And so I think that's one particular good reason for everybody here to start listening and looking at LGBT issues within their workplace.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear me now.
Okay.
I would also, this time my mic. There we go. It's fine. I would also add, I was fired because I was LGBT. Fired in 1994 from a law firm. And I don't think that that's something that I want any of you to live through yourselves. So why should you care? In fact, I would like to turn the question around a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Do you want BGL, BNP Paribas, to be more creative, more competitive, with committed employees that are happy to come to work, that they find that BGL, BNP Paribas, is a good place to work? I think I was surprised of that statistic that Nancy gave us, that despite the minister and the prime minister are out, that 28% of employees in Luxembourg are not out. Well, we're going to talk about why you should create an organization and a structure that those 28% people can be out.
Absolutely.
Important steps to take, of course. So let's hear a little bit more about how you guys individually got involved. So what was the trigger to address LGBTI topics in your respective companies?
Sure. So for me in BNP Paribas UK, one of the main triggers was the lack of role models that I could see within the organisation. And we know evidence continually points that unless we can see people who are like us, achieving and going ahead of us, before us, we will not be able to perceive ourselves as being able to be that successful as well. So the lack of role models was a key trigger for me, both personally and also for the organisation as well, to say this, we can have LGBT senior talent within the organisation as well. And also for me, I could see exclusionary practices happening as well within the organisation. So for example, LGBT people not being invited to the Thursday night drinks, for example. If there was a straight male culture, for example, the LGBT people were not being invited to those drinks, and then the negative impacts that was having on people's careers as a result. So I could see that there were a couple of major triggers there for me.
What would be your specific advice in that situation? I'm curious. If there is a drink once a week or something, what would you say to this group of people in order to help them understand?
I think it's responsibility of the people that are organising those drinks, as well as the LGBT person as well. But it's also their responsibility to make sure that they're including everyone. For example, who's that email going out to say that those drinks are happening? Is it going to a small select group of people? Is it going to the same people all the time? Why is somebody making those implied judgments already that they won't be interested, they won't want to go there without asking them? So I'd say get curious as well and say, actually, we will invite you. And I think it is about slightly getting out of your comfort zone as well.
Do you think that holds true for managers as well as for somebody who's just an LGBT person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think managers particularly have responsibility as well. If they're managing a team to go beyond their comfort zone and inviting all of those people, all their members of staff to those social events, etc. as well, and those team building events that happen outside of ours as well. So we know a lot of business, particularly in the UK, happens outside as well. It's not just in the office as well.
So it needs to spread its wings a little bit, and people understand the discomfort that can be created if people feel excluded.
Absolutely, and we've all felt excluded at some point in our life, and we all know how that feels. That can be excluded on the audio conference call, not be invited to the meeting, for example, and we know how that feels. And I think it's about raising the empathy and saying, actually, how did I feel in that situation, and do I want my colleagues to feel like that, or do I want my staff members to feel like that?
That's a very good point. That's actually what I was trying to point out a little bit as well in my presentation, that try to put yourself in the shoes of the person that's across the table from you or in the office. there's always something from every individual. Just a very brief anecdote. I actually had somebody come out to me once who wasn't LGBT, but he came out as being dyslexic. And all of the problems that he had to go through by hiding this. So it's a very powerful thing, the feeling of not being included. Yeah.
If I may, I think we had the role model. We had role models already in France. We had the role model of the Pride Network in the UK, and we had the role model of the Pride Network in the United States also. So we actually had the luxury of seeing the advantages for the BNP Paribas staff in the United States and in the UK, and wanted to bring that to Paris. I would say there was another trigger that also happened. It happened in 2013 when the first head of diversity at BNP Paribas decided to launch the first Diversity and Inclusion Week that we had ever had. It lasted the entire week. There was one conference. It was about the business case for having an open organization for LGBT individuals and staff members. And it was the most controversial. Equinet was open at the time, and we had to shut Equinet down because of the negative comments about this was coming. So this was actually a trigger for the head of diversity at the time, Elizabeth Caraco, and her successor, Barbara Leviel, here in the room, also as head of diversity and inclusion for BNP Paribas, to continue that work about bringing together the LGBT community and making it a safer place. And finally, I would suggest that the third person, Elizabeth, Barbara, and then Yves Martin-Char, who's the head of HR for BNP Paribas globally, were very committed to bringing that openness and authenticity to the workplace. And the final trigger was that, as most of you probably know, BNP Paribas put into place this past year a new value statement called the BNP Paribas Way. And one of those statements is a good place to work. What does that mean? If you can't be authentic and you can't be who you are when you arrive at 50 Avenue John F. Kennedy, then it's not a good place to work.
That rings so true to what I know from all of our member organizations as well. If you cannot be yourself at work, then ultimately it's not good for you nor for the organization that you work with. So Bruce, tell me just a little bit how you actually got started with your LGBT employee network, because for us it's obvious why it's necessary, but for many people maybe not.
Well, I think I want to rebound on the issues of the triggers, and I think the surprise that the group really had when we had that first diversity conference in 2013 about the negative statements, very negative and moralizing statements that we had from internal employees. With Barbara worked with HR and with Jean-Laurent Bonafé to sign a diversity charter for the equivalent of this group in Paris called L'Autre Cercle. And we needed, and I think Barbara needed, that to be accompanied. It's not just that the organization signs that charter. The English expression, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And the money that we put in there was a group of out individuals and allies that were, if I might pat ourselves on the back, courageous enough to say, we are out and we will help you represent your diversity and make a good place to work real for LGBTI. So it was really a process that was accompanied both with the formal structure and putting an informal structure together of a group of out people. I didn't know any single person of the 10 co-founders at BNP Paribas Pride France. But together we worked to create an organization that brings visibility to out individuals. They have a place to go, they have a place to send comments to and ask for help. So that's how we proceeded.
You really created an identity within the organization.
We're creating an identity. It just started October 6th.
Oh, okay,
So.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, Vinay, go ahead.
And
Yeah.
absolutely, to echo Bruce's comments as well, what the employee network in the UK did is it brought policy into life. It moved our some fantastic diversity and inclusion policies off the intranet and made them into real life activities and brings it completely to life for our staff members in the UK. And like Bruce says, it made it visible. Sexual orientation can be hidden, just like disabilities can be hidden, for example. Sexual orientation can be hidden. So we needed to make outright statements, both from senior management within the organization, but with the employee network as well, to make it visible and creating those visible role models to say it's okay to be gay, LGBT within BNP Paribas.
Yeah, you know, again, this rings so true to what I know from so many workplace pride organizations. And the funny thing is, this does not take a lot of money, or it just takes an effort, and it takes persistence, and it takes the willingness to do it. But you do need to go through with it. And I think what I picked up from what you said as well, with the straight allies, it's very important from the very beginning. If you are a straight ally, if you believe in the cause of diversity, support LGBT people, support women and diverse ethnic groups, everybody, show your face, because that means everything to us. It's really what helps the organization understand it as well.
The anecdote, I would say, when I invited my former boss to the signing of the Diversity Charter in October, her name's Natalie, and I said, Natalie, would you please come to this Diversity Charter? She said, sure, I'll come for you, but I don't know exactly why I should come. And the French have a wonderful expression. I think most of you are French speakers. Je ne te demande pas avec qui tu couches.
Yeah, oui.
The French use this all the time. But Natalie, I don't ask you who you sleep with. I know you're married, and I know you're divorced, and I know you have 3 kids. But I have no idea avec qui tu couches. And I'm not going to tell you who avec qui je couche. And it's not the issue here also.
It's not about sex. Believe it or not, it's not about sex. No, it's really not. Okay, yeah. Vinay, tell me a little bit, what are your priority actions going forward?
Sure. Well, what we have in the UK is through our Diversity Council, which is made up of 13 of the most senior business people within the UK of all the entities at managing director level. We have a clear target of becoming a Stonewall top 100 employer within the UK. So all of BNP Paribas UK entities to become top 100 employers. So there's quite a few companies in the UK, and I'm pleased to say we are skirting the top 100 now. We're not far from achieving that target now as well. And the employee network has been instrumental in helping us achieve that. For example, if we're looking at employee policy, then our employment lawyers will be talking to our Pride Network group, saying how can we make our employee policies more inclusive in terms of terminology, for example. It's also helping us bring us closer to our clients. We know that what we do now, along with a collection of other banks, investment banks, and etc., in the city of London, is we sponsor LGBT film festivals now, which we do invite clients to. So it's bringing us closer to our clients as well. And what we've also found the network has been really helpful for is in terms of when we're designing training programs within the UK as well, whether it around unconscious bias, etc., to make sure we're using real-life examples of what happens within organizations so that we can educate our staff on LGBT sensitivities in the workplace.
I want to pick up on one thing you said, and that is to your clients. Again, having worked in the financial industry, I know how important that is, of course, for any industry for that matter. Think about it. Up to 10% of your clients are LGBT as well.
Yeah.
Private banking or any type of client, you're speaking their language. Once your organization understands the topic even better itself, authentically and structurally, you can actually relate better with society and with your clients as well. Very important when it, again, comes back down to the business case.
Absolutely, and what we've also found as well amongst our peer organisations is, and other banks, etc., is when we're recruiting talent, to be able to say that absolutely we LGBT inclusive workforce and workplace, and I have concrete examples where people have actually said if it comes down to 2 banks and one is much more LGBT inclusive than the other for an LGBT member of staff, they will choose us. I have concrete examples of that, and we have just like so many of us, if being an LGBT person, if we can see an organisation supporting LGBT equality and rights, we'll want to shop with them more, we want to buy more from them. If we see Amazon, for example, or Google or whatever, doing more LGBT activities, we're more likely to want to shop and search with them.
And just to add on to that, it's not just LGBT people. Yeah. Those organizations that really embrace LGBT, particularly for the younger, the millennial generation, people just coming into the workforce, they want to work for organizations that are open and accepting of all types of people. And if they can see that an organization is open for LGBT, it's much more attractive for them to work there,
Yeah.
as opposed to some organization and you cannot see what is going on
Absolutely.
behind the walls, you know. So Bruce, tell me a little bit, what do you see are the roles and responsibilities of your network so people can understand a little bit how they can interact as well?
Well, I think that if Vinay's organization is a young adult, we are a young baby. We're still in diapers. And one of the roles and responsibilities I think that we have, and I had never seen your slide before, but the slide that showed Europe with the different colors. And to my great surprise and dismay, French was red. I think that's over 60% people are not out at work. And I think one of our first priority is to make the group's commitment to the Equality Charter believable, so that they see us, so that we're visible, that we provide them an opportunity to come and meet other gay and lesbian people, because there's lots of gays and lesbians that I don't know of. And in fact, I was surprised once I became spokesperson, I found out several colleagues, at least 5 that I'd worked with on a daily basis, were actually lesbian or gay. So our first priority is making the group's commitment believable, and it is for our organization. The next is accompanying the group also in initiatives that they will take for LGBT employees. And it's a much broader than just LGBT employees, but in the entire diversity world, about bringing a safe place and a real place for people to be authentic. So our first actions are smaller actions, making the group's commitment believable, providing a place for employees to come and tell us what they need and what they want. In fact, our first initiative will be next Wednesday in Paris for about 100 individuals that are coming, all LGBT and LGBT allies, to come and speak to us about what they would like us to do and how we can help them.
Very good. It's involving people so they can really
Yes.
understand it as well.
Yes.
Vinay, how about in London?
In London, so in terms of strategic actions and policies, I think one of the key things I really want to drill down on is the responsibilities that LGBT people have to this as well. Is saying, and for example, when we launched the LGBT network in London, there were certain anxieties from LGBT members of staff themselves to say they don't want to be seen in an LGBT event at BNP Paribas. So I think there's some work to be done there as well to say, actually, this does happen in BNP Paribas, and there is a responsibility, like you were mentioning earlier, for LGBT people to collaborate as well, and they're part of the dialogue, and to take a seat at the table for this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That all rings so true to me as well. So guys, tell me, how did your staff react, the staff, when you launched the networks internally? Well, you kind of just said it, yeah.
And so, like I said, there were some anxieties from LGBT staff. There were some anxieties also from non-LGBT staff as well, which Fabienne alluded to earlier as well. So, and it's about education. It's about education. It's about moving the conversation away. It's not sex. This is sexual orientation, and this is a business issue, and it's a business driver actually, and turning the conversation around. So, it's about education.
Yeah. And Bruce, you're.
As I said, I think that it was a watershed in 2013 when the group actually saw that there was a very vocal minority that they needed to deal with about the LGBT issue. However, in 2015, 2 years later, I think the group had evolved remarkably, and I don't think that there really was the kind of negative reactions that we had 2 years earlier. Yes, that still exists, but we'd moved the conversation to a conversation that was only about being and providing a good place to work. This is not a political issue. It is not a religious issue. It is an issue of fairness and equality, that all employees should have the same ability to bring to work that every other employee has. So the reactions were far better. In French culture, as you know, I'm not French, but French are very hierarchical. When the group decides something, the managers implement it, which is great. So there might have been manager pushback, but the managers will respect and implement the diversity charter.
Okay. I'm actually going to ask you guys a question which isn't on the list here. to throw you off a little bit. When I was at ING, there was an announcement made externally about the creation of the LGBT employee network. And there were reactions from clients, and I can tell you some of them were not good. The great majority of them were very positive, but we actually had some clients who even closed their account at ING because the company was supporting LGBT topics. I was very, very proud at the time to say that the management stood up and said, our employees and the majority of society is what's important for the institution. And that's how we move forward. I was just going to ask you, has there been any reaction? You said some already, but from the outside, and how that's been dealt with.
If I may, the reaction wasn't particularly positive from the outside.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest, very transparent. Our press release was leaked earlier than had been expected. Our press release, or the news that we were going to be signing a charter for equality, was leaked outside, and an anti-LGBT organization got a hold of it and contacted and started sending hacking mails to both Jean-Laurent Bonnafé, the CEO of BNP Paribas, and to Yves-Martin Charre. So for about a day and a half, Barbara, if that's right, their emails were shut down because they got I think, over 12,000 emails. So this was an organization that was combating an issue that they saw that was a religious or moral issue that was not our issue at BNP Paribas. This is not a moral, and it's not a religious issue. It is an issue about fairness.
Yeah.
Sorry about this. I can be very emotional about this.
It happens to me all the time, really. Cry at every conference.
Clients also responded,
Yeah.
and I would say 95% of the client response was negative. And I would say 95% of that client response was coming from a certain economic background and a certain suburb within the Paris region. We responded on a selective basis depending on what the mail was. A lot of the mails were simply cut and paste mails from the exterior anti-LGBT organization, and those didn't merit response. So it was a controversial thing, but I think that what was very interesting, Jean-Laurent, when he signed the signature, when he signed the Diversity Charter, he stood up and he said, he had his BlackBerry in his pocket, and he said, you can pollute this machine, and you can stop me from working through this machine, but I have something that's bigger and stronger that will bring me, and he touched his heart. And I thought that was a very...
You're going to get me going.
a very moving moment. If you know Jean-Laurent is not somebody that's particularly emotional, but I think that that was a very moving and very touching and strong commitment to everybody in the room. It was about the size of this room today, 180 people.
I'm so glad you said this also, because I think it's a very good show of a demonstration of how this affects our lives. You know it. Anybody who's LGBT in this room knows what we're talking about. This is something you have dealt with your entire life long, and we want to all work to be in a workplace where we can at least be ourselves. It comes down to respect. That's what it's all about. That mutual respect, and if an organization can create an atmosphere with that, you'll have the most loyal, best employees you can imagine in the LGBT community. I think, at least. So, Vinay, tell me, what would you recommend to a company that is wondering whether or not they should address LGBT issues?
I think what LGBT has done for BNP Paribas in the UK is it's moved the conversation on from just gender diversity, and it's actually moved the whole conversation onto inclusion, and LGBT has actually trailblazed the way and opened the gateway for so many other areas of diversity within the UK as well. Because within the UK, the conversation was getting stuck at gender diversity, and it had been there for about 30 years actually, and it hasn't actually moved very far either. what LGBT has done, it's not only made it a great place to work for LGBT people and straight allies, etc., but it's also opened the gateway for so many other forms of diversity that we can talk around things like race now. We can talk about things like mental health now. It's opened the door to that as well. So it's actually really helped our company become much, much more inclusive. So the positive impact of embracing LGBT is not just restricted to the LGBT community at all. It's a clear signal to the LGBT community, absolutely. It's a clear signal of inclusiveness. And we, BNP Paribas, definitely reaping those benefits now at the moment.
Very good. Bruce, last word?
I don't have one.
You don't have one? Well, then I'll leave you with one little, which reminds me of something that within the LGBT community, within the working world, we often use the cliche canary in a coal mine. I don't know if you, en français, je ne sais pas, canary in a coal mine, but we call it the pink canary in a coal mine. So if you have within your organization an LGBT group that can do what you say, that starts things, helps the organization to realize what being an open and accepting and respecting organization is all about, it basically means this is a good place to work. And that's a message for everybody. Anybody who wants to work here, this is where you should do it. Thank you very much, Vinay, Bruce, wonderful. Thank you all.
Bruce, Vinay, and David, thank you so much for the fascinating debate that can inspire our audience. After having an overview of what is happening around the LGBTI question in different European countries, it seems important as a Diversity Charter Lëtzebuerg to question this issue for Luxembourg. To help us to understand more our national context in this regard, I would like to welcome Mrs. Gabriele Schneider. She is president of the Luxembourgish non-profit organization Rosa that has been defending the interest and supporting LGBTI people for 20 years. Gabriele, the floor is yours.
By the end of the 70s, the homosexual community in Luxembourg woke up after a long period of silence and started to become visible. The community came out in often more or less political and offending claiming groups as similar movements already existing since years in our neighbor countries. Some idealist and enthusiastic people came openly out as homosexuals and claimed in public for non-discrimination acts of LGBT people. The most successful working groups built up in Luxembourg at a glance. In 1979 until 1981, Homosexualität Kollektiv Spackelter, founded by a group of homo and heterosexual men, convincing the different political parties to act against the Article 372 bis of the Penal Code, claiming for equality and against discrimination of homosexuals. 1981 until 1990, Initiativgroep Homosexualiteit Lëtzebuerg, IGHL, claiming for social and juridical equality of LGBT people, abolishment of Article 372 bis of the Penal Code, elimination and of prejudgment against homosexuals. First and regular meetings took place in the premises of Planning Familial, and roundtables were organized to raise awareness and to convince political parties and the media on the statements. In 1981, Mouvement de la Libération des Femmes, MLF, they organized a first conference on the thematic historical development of homophobia. In 1982, L'Info Lesbienne, working group of lesbian and feminists among the group MLF, roundtables were organized and the first magazine on lesbian topics was launched. 1986, AIDS Hulp Lëtzebuerg was initiated as well as the first helpline and information center. In 1986, the first homosexual magazine, De Linkse Loesert, and the first questionnaire survey under the title Lesbian Sexuality has been launched. The first homosexual week was initiated and enveloped by information stands, films, discussions, and roundtables. In 1989, the Initiative AGHL addressed a specific questionnaire to all political parties, raising awareness and claiming clear positions of all and each political party on the rights and interests of LGBT community. In 1992, Sit Femme jumped into life, claiming for equality of women and men. 1995, lesbian group Rosa was born, a grouping defending the rights of women in general, lesbian women, and focused on discrimination and coming out. In June 1996, our association, Rosa Lëtzebuerg ASBL, was founded with the intention to promote civil rights and to fight against all discrimination of LGBTI citizens, to work on legal, social, and cultural plans to face a complete equality for all LGBT people, to organize social cultural events to raise awareness and to promote specific claims and statements, to act as the voice of the LGBT community to defend their rights to organize political discussions, to fight for equality in marriage and to claim for full adoption rights. This year we are celebrating our 20th anniversary. In 1999, Rosa Lëtzebuerg initiated the first gay pride à la Luxembourgeoise, Gay Mat, a mix of promoting our specific claims, statements, and party time as well. Among information booths of association at the final festival day, film week, art exhibitions, and music, you will find also well-organized roundtables and podium discussions focusing on LGBTI topics. A social cultural event celebrated with and for the whole society, raising awareness under the rainbow, meet and bring people together, communicating in public in a neutral environment with all members of the society. Nowadays, the Gay Mat developed into a festival over more than 1 week. Various national and international associations and also diversity groups of local businesses are already taking part for years. Oops. This year, the 17th edition of Gay Mat Festival will take place starting the 4th of July until the 9th of July in Esch-sur-Alzette. In November 2002, Rosa Lëtzebuerg ASBL opened its Gay and Lesbian Information Center called SIGAL. I will refer a bit later on SIGAL's mission and work. In 2009, Rosa Lëtzebuerg ASBL brought into life a working group called Transgender Luxembourg. Today, the group is independently existing from Rosa under a newly formed association called ITGL, Intersex and Transgender Luxembourg. To officially implement the mission of focusing on transgender topics, which since opening of the Center SIGAL in 2002 were regularly increased in special counseling, Rosa Lëtzebuerg ASBL amended its article of association in 2012 to officially integrate the T for transgender to become a fully legal existing LGBT association. Unfortunately, most of the LGBT groups built up since 1979 disappeared. Discouraged among themselves and, at that time, by the society. A sign of irregular dynamism at that time, more focused and concentrated on activism of some individual key activists than on groups. Rosa Lëtzebuerg ASBL survived. A bit of history, important laws implemented around LGBT movements on a national level and in general crossing borders at a glance. 1970, the first LGBT movement is born. The Stonewall riots. A series of spontaneous violent demonstrations by members of gay LGBT community against a police raid that took place in the early morning hours of June 28, 1969 in Stonewall Inn, located in the Greenwich Village, Manhattan, New York City. They are widely considered to constitute the single most important event leading to the gay liberation movement and the modern fight for LGBT rights in the United States and all over the world. In 1974, American Psychiatric Association, APA, decided the abolishment of homosexuality from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. In 1990, World Health Organization declared homosexuality as no longer to be considered as a pathology. 92, in Luxembourg, the age of consent has been fixed at 16 years without considering sexual orientation or gender. In 1997, in Luxembourg, first law implemented on anti-discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation. 2004 in Luxembourg, registered partnership. 2006 in Luxembourg, law of November 28, 2006 on equality treatment, implementation into national law of the EU Directive 2043/CE and 2078/CE. The implementation of such directives implemented gender as a subject of the national protective and anti-discrimination law. Sexual orientation was already included as a topic, but gender had until then always been considered as important that it was referred as a known topic, subjected to its own directives and legislation. However, as gender identity by principle finally is considered a simple matter of gender at all, it is covered by the same legislative measures as sexual orientation. Moreover, the mentioned anti-discrimination law on equal treatment applies to all people, both public and private entities or people, including public bodies, regarding the following fields: the conditions of access to employment, self-employment, or work in general, including selection criteria and recruitment conditions, whatever the branch of activity is, at all levels of professional hierarchy, including the promotion, career development, access to all types and all levels of vocational guidance, vocational training, further training, including the acquisition of practical experience, the conditions of employment and working conditions, including conditions regarding dismissals and remuneration bar pay. Being a member of all type of involvement in an organization, union, or syndicate of workers or employers, including the benefits provided of such organizations. Social protection, including social security and healthcare. Access to education, access to goods and services. 2008 in Luxembourg, recognition of foreign registered partnership. 2010 in Luxembourg, draft on the reformation of marriage and adoption law. In 2013 in Luxembourg, marriage, equality and full adoption rights. In Luxembourg, same-sex couples can marry since the 1st of January 2015. Our Prime Minister married in 2015 and around 100 couples followed. This recent reform of the marriage and adoption legislation set both straight and same-sex couples on a complete equal level. Any same-sex couples of all nationalities and all legally living in Luxembourg can now have recourse to the new law and will be considered a legally married couple under Luxembourg law. Same-sex couples can also legally apply to adopt children. Luxembourg also... I have to drink something, sorry. Thank you. As a quite specific situation due to the tiny size of the country, such as also due to its wealth. Considering that most people feel secure and comfortable in their daily life, they less tend to care about differences. Also, the government, public forces and the society in general appear to mainly have a positive attitude towards the LGBT population. A good example, therefore, consists in the public reaction during the legislative amendment on the marriage law. There had been some voices opposing, mainly when it came to opening adoption rights to same-sex couples. But the amount of the intensity of such opposing actions were not at all comparable to what, for instance, France as a country had to face when they were discussing same-sex marriage. Also, the reaction had more likely to be considered as individual reactions rather than reaction of one or more groups. Transgender and intersex. Luxembourg has no specific legislation ruling clear procedures when it comes to a person's will to adapt their physical gender to their personality. This may mean a more complicated, unclear and less transparent path to follow at first. The truth is that until now, the legal recognition of trans people and administrative gender adaptation, names and gender changes on official papers and documents, were depending on whether they had undergone a reassignment surgery or not. So far and for decades, this had to be done before getting your papers done. In 2013, the Ministry of Justice has declared the intention to apply some administrative simplifications when it comes to gender adapting conditions and measures. At our knowledge, no official act has been filed for this at current state, but we are in an optimistic mood that transgender and intersex issues will on near future political agenda. On Aderhout Day in 2015, Minister Corinne Kahn, in the name and on behalf of the Luxembourg government, sent a big sign by signing the so-called Declaration of Intent. A declaration worked out at the Focal Point Aderhout Forum in Malta in 2014, in which is stated, among others, In its point 6, that the undersigned guarantee the full legal recognition of persons' gender identity in all areas of life, in particular by enabling the change of name and gender in official documents in a fast, transparent and accessible manner. In its point 7, that the undersigned remove abusive and disproportionate requirements for legal gender recognition, make available appropriate gender reassignment services, and includes that no one is subjected to gender reassignment procedures without his or her consent. In its point 8, that the undersigned welcome international initiatives aimed at increasing the level of knowledge on the human rights situation of intersex persons. It is in its point 12 that the undersigned cooperate with and consult non-governmental organizations defending the human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans and intersex persons on the adoption and implementation of measures that may have an impact on the human rights of LGBTI persons, and ensure that all civil society actors working on LGBTI rights issues are afforded a safe and enabling environment, a law and practice to carry out their legitimate functions and operate free from hindrance and insecurity. LGBT at workplace, results of the Fundamental Rights Agency LGBTI Survey 2012. Luxembourg has enormous social and pedagogical resources, regularly offering awareness, raising and preventive activities for schools, youth groups, businesses, administrations, and any other groups that may be interested in developing anti-discrimination actions and intra-company departments. With most of them, we are working regularly to exchange experiences and to develop our sphere of action. With our center SIGAL, Luxembourg does have a professional information and counseling center for LGBT people and everybody who is interested in LGBT questions. The center has a social service agreement provided by the Ministry of Family, Integration and the Greater Region that allows us to employ 2 full-time employees, a specialized gay social educationalist and a specialized lesbian socialist. SIGAL is an LGBT information and counseling center that provides advice to anyone who is looking for information in terms of homosexuality, sexual orientation in general, and gender identity. The center offers and provides professional coming out support at any age and can assist with many other issues, for example, enrich and inspire already existing or helping in developing diversity and anti-discrimination sections, in implementing LGBT anti-discrimination charter and policies by its over more than 10 years experience and knowledge in LGBT issues. Moreover, SIGAL elaborates prevention and awareness raising activities for schools and youth centers. The center also develops and executes training measures for all kinds of professionals who want to become more familiar with all kinds of LGBT topics. Please feel free to contact us. Together and united, we are able to bring more visibility to LGBT topics in general, to the actors to analyze and bring solutions on the problems we are facing at workplace and in general in the day-to-day life. Nevertheless, the existing comfortable legal surrounding here in Luxembourg. The more visibility, the more understanding, the more we may act against homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and to bring us all closer to our all primary wish of a more just society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriele. As the time is running, I think I will not open the floor to questions, but we can pursue the debate during the lunch. I would like to thank our panelists very much for the rich debate we had today. Many questions have been answered, but I am sure that a number of new questions have been raised. The Committee for the Diversity Charter Lëtzebuerg, which I represent today, intend to continue to place LGBTI issues on its agenda. Should any organization present today be interested to take part in this discussion, please don't hesitate to contact us. Just a quick information before the lunch. The 12th of May, we will have the second edition of the National Diversity Day. You are all invited to participate. And if you want more information, please note that we will be organizing a preparatory workshop on the 18th of February. To conclude, I would like to thank all the participants and BGL employees, and I invite you all to pursue the debate at a networking lunch offered by BGL BNP Paribas. Thank you very much.